The following is a Hoop Ball presentation.
Hello and welcome to the Hoop Ball DFS Today podcast. Today is Thursday, August 29th, and it is also our very first installment of the DFS Today podcast. And we could not be more excited for the opportunity to talk and share and really dig through all of the fantasy draft stuff and DFS information to get you guys to championships in your leagues and big wins every night in the DFS world. I am Joe Sarvadi, affectionately known as Coach, and I am joined by one of the most respected NBA DFS guys in the industry, Mr. Mike Apotria. Mr. Apotria, how are you, sir?
Coach, I think this is something we've both been waiting for, biting, clawing, trying to get, and we are here. We are going to be doing this, once a week before the preseason, getting everybody going, fired up. And then, let's just talk about it, Joe. We're going to be doing this every single night once the season hits. We're going to be on top of this.
It's exciting, man. I know you and I have been talking about this for months and, preparing information, and both of us are pretty active DFS players, and we both also play, leagues, annual and head-to-head, etc. So this is going to be fantastic. I think, our approach is going to be different. We want to really differentiate ourselves in the industry, and again, a lot of time and preparation has gone into this with Dan Besbris at our Hoop Ball Wizard Behind the Drapes guy, and Mike and myself. And we really want to be unique to the industry, want to be able to share and strategize all kinds of different angles that are going to give you that specific edge that you need, to be successful in DFS, regardless of the format, regardless of the site. So we'll be talking about all of that much more in depth. But before we get started, I want to talk about our sponsor that is bringing this, really help bring this to fruition. And, for these 6 shows prior to the beginning of preseason, we're going to do a lot of strategy, really get down to the nitty gritty to get everybody ready to crush when it comes to the beginning of the season. And so I just to give you the information on our presenting sponsor, those are our friends at FantasyDraft, and just very, very well respected in the industry, and very appreciative that they've jumped on, and we look forward to a long-term relationship with them. FantasyDraft is the only rake-free daily fantasy sports site in the industry, and I can vouch for that because I play on there every day, and it is rake-free. Make sure to check out also, they have a rake-free $1 million contest coming up. It's called the Hooters DFS Football Contest. Now, this is a big football contest that they have coming prior to us launching our NBA stuff. They'll have all kinds of stuff going in the NBA as well. That contest is on September 8th. You can also jump into their rake-free contest that they have this Thursday at 7 o'clock Eastern time is when it closes, and they are giving away tickets to the $1 Million Maker rake-free contest along with other prizes. And so also the great news is if you sign up at FantasyDraft.com and use the promo code Hoop-Ball, that's HOOP-BALL, you got to put the dash in there, you receive 1 free week trial membership where you can play up to $1,000 in complimentary rake-free DFS action. And I'll tell you, Mike, I don't know if you are real aware or have done that yet, but can you imagine playing rake-free dollar for dollar for $1,000? Isn't that an awesome offer?
If I could only tell you how awesome rake-free playing is, it's the best thing that might happen in this industry in a long, long time. A lot of a lot of avid players like you and myself, we lose a lot of money to the rake on a yearly basis, a monthly basis, a weekly basis, however you want to say it, because I play a lot of volume of contests. You bring that volume over to a site like FantasyDraft, you're gonna be happy with that rake free. Believe me, it's one of the best things I've ever seen happen to the business, and I think we're gonna see a lot of these other sites follow suit eventually. But for now, we're gonna enjoy it over here on FantasyDraft, baby.
Absolutely, and don't forget that promo code and go after it. So, all right, a couple of things. I think the best way to start out, since this is our first podcast, is maybe just to get to know Mr. Apotria and myself a little bit, and sort of what brought us here to this point and at this time in the DFS and fantasy basketball world. Mike, do you want to give us sort of your story, if you can?
Yeah, definitely. It's not a very long one, So a lot of the people listening might already know. This whole DFS podcast world started a little bit last season. I started joining Dan about once a week. We started doing our expert contests, and from there it's kind of just grown and grown. I've been with Hoopball this is going to be going on my about 3.5 seasons I've been here. So I started about 3.5 years ago. I started midway through the season now. I love it here. I love all the guys I work with. It's a great group of guys. I got a bachelor's from Southern Connecticut State University in sports and journalism, and a little cognate and a BA in sports management over there as well. So I've always kind of been immersed into the sports world. I've worked for a few networks around here. Got to have my pleasure doing a couple of events, but I'm over here in Connecticut, so we don't have too many pro sports over here. So a lot of the stuff I had to do was college for UConn and that, but. Yeah, man, I've always been around the ball. I played a little bit. I wasn't ever very good. I mean, I don't have the personal background like you over there, Coach, that you're going to get to. This guy over here. Wait till you guys hear who we got to coach against. It's one of the coolest things I've ever heard. So I'm just going to pass it right on to you, Coach, because at the end of the day, I think your stories are probably a little bit cooler than mine.
Well, I don't know about cooler, maybe older. But, let me say this, Mike. When Dan and I started talking about doing a DFS show, I said the only way I would do it is if Mike Apotria was going to be the co-host of the show, because, I have gotten to know you over the last 8 or 9 months pretty darn well. And we've talked a lot of DFS, a lot of NBA. And man, I know a winner when I hear one, and I really respect your opinions and your strategies, and I think it's going to benefit our listeners tremendously. So I'm very appreciative that you decided to do the show with me, man.
I'm just glad that I can, have somebody that, like you said, we bounce each other. So Coach and I, on any given night, when we're rolling our lineups out there, we would call each other, we would text each other, we would kind of, spin ideas off each other. He would tell me to play JaVale McGee versus Brooklyn. I would totally fade it and tell him it was a terrible idea and you should go Kuzma again. And at that point, JaVale McGee would drop about 83 fantasy points. So we have our moments back and forth, and I just wanted to get that one out of the way because I had a feeling it's going to get brought up at some point. Of the night I faded the massive JaVale McGee night.
It cost me so much that I still get a tear in my eye, but I still love you, Mike. And that was just, but you know what? I'm so glad you brought it up, because that's the other thing we're going to do differently on this show. We're going to be really honest, upfront, forward. We're going to tout our picks. We're not going to pick everybody at 8% on every team. We're going to approach it from the fact of, who do we really think is going to stand out and why, and break all those reasons down. And then when we get into the regular season and we start, and we're going each day, at the beginning of each show, we're going to do a study of who are our main picks in our main lineup from the night before. Sometimes we'll be, taking a home run trot and feel great about it. Sometimes we'll be able to discuss, what went wrong, why did this happen? Let's just figure it out so that we don't make that error again. So, it's going to be, sometimes extremely fun and sometimes a little painful, but that's the way we're going to learn and, really bounce everything around so that we can be the best that we can be. So we're not going to give any fluff and it's going to be the real deal, and we're going to own up to everything that we back. So Yes, the JaVale McGee thing. When you hear me refer to Mike as JaVale McGee, that generally means I think he's full of it on that particular thing. So that'll be something we'll be able to have fun with throughout until I guess he gives me a winner. But no worries. But let me briefly get into my past a little bit. And again, obviously, I'm a little bit older than Mike, just maybe a couple of months. But now I've been around the game for a long time. It's funny. My dad coached some college basketball. I played at the high school in Division II level, and then I got into teaching and coaching, and coached at Erie Cathedral Prep back in the day. Coached there for 12 years, won a 5A state championship, and then retired after my very last game in '96, which was against Lower Merion and Kobe Bryant. And you can look that up. It's some good information. We held Kobe to his lowest total of the year. Believe it was 16 points, and held the score to their lowest score in the entire 4 years Kobe was there. The game was in the low 40s, upper 30s. So, I had a lot of experience on that end. I loved it, the passion of it. I got out of basketball to get into the corporate world, which I've been in for years. And, but always had the passion for the NBA, followed it, played in leagues. And then the moment that DFS broke, I jumped in head first because just loved the aspect of it. Felt like I was coaching again because you're putting those squads together and strategizing in a similar type way. So I've been involved with that, from the beginning. Have had some really good success on the NBA side, and really just my background and what Mike and I talk about a lot is I love to look at trends. You'll see when we get into things more in depth is, I like to look at the things like coaching rotations. I actually, with the NBA ticket, watch as many games as possible. I'm looking from everything from, when a coach takes a player out, how's he, talking to that player, who looks like they may be slightly in the doghouse, who are they counting on for big shots? All of those, game within the game type of things, that give you those small edges, rotations, pace. And we'll talk about what we're going to talk about in the body of this episode is, there's never been more of a year of needing to prepare than this year, because without question, I followed the NBA very, very closely since my very first NBA game I went to with my dad in the mid 70s, the Buffalo Braves and Bob McAdoo. We're talking back in the day. And then by the way, we started our first fantasy draft when I was a sophomore in high school. And on my first team was Larry Bird and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. So again, I'm not as young as Mr. Apotria, but I have lived through that stuff. So anyway.
I got a question. Do you think Kobe would have had more points if he actually had some teammates on his high school team that worked as hard as him in practice? You think he would have, maybe had 12 championships like he said with Shaq?
Dude, I'm telling you, that news, those two are hammering on each other again. I cannot believe it. That's so funny. But Kobe, I'll tell you, I never saw anybody through the years that I coached and watched the game work like Kobe. Anybody. I totally believe that Jordan and probably LeBron are the top two players that have ever played from what I've seen. But as far as work ethic and dedication, and if I'm on the bench and I have everybody that's ever played the game and I need a shot to win it, after experiencing firsthand Kobe, I'd go to Kobe. We got to, after that 96 season, I got to assistant coach on an AAU Pennsylvania All-Star team, and Kobe was on that team. So I got to see him in the gym for about 4 or 5 weeks. And it's when people say, oh, he's the first in the gym, I'm telling you, he was 30 minutes before anybody, and we had to force him to leave the gym. I've never seen just, eye the tiger, go after Black Mamba, whatever you want to call it. But man, he was fun to watch. And And I'll tell you, that is, I like to look for that little glimmer in players as you're watching. And those things give you huge edges in the DFS world. You see a little bit of weakness or a guy that, I'll start the controversy right off the bat. I love Steph Curry. He's the best shooter that's ever played. But let me tell you this: if I'm in that huddle, I just don't know if he's always the guy in crunch time that I'd go to. So I just bring stuff like that up is because everybody can say, "Oh, Kobe's great," but I know I'm going to take a lot of heat for saying Curry sometimes isn't the gutsiest in that moment. But that's just a point to be made that's how raw we're going to get on this show. We're going to talk about and debate and disagree and get listeners involved to talk about all those kinds of things. Because really in the competitive world of fantasy and DFS, it's a couple of buckets that make a difference. I mean, and everybody's looking at the same optimizers, the same analytics, the same projections from the sharks out there, but we want to approach it differently. I think, this new way we're looking at everything and the way we're going to break it down, yes, we're going to utilize those things that are making people successful in the industry, but we're going to give a new slice to all of that I think everybody's going to really love.
And you hit the nail on the head. And the bottom line is, in DFS, there's always an edge to be had. There's always a way to one-up the field, to one-up your head-to-head, your GPP. There's always an edge, and when there's an edge, you need to find it. You need to look for it because every little advantage matters. And again, Coach hit the nail right on the head. We're gonna be talking about things anywhere from coach speak to guys traveling to the cities where they're from. Little things like that is I love to find those little edges because getting a guy. Knowing a guy's family, 17 family members are going to be in the crowd on an away game that he's traveling to, some stuff like that can actually really impact the game itself. And I love targeting those nights. Narratives. Some narratives are just amazing, but we're also going to get right into the good hard stats. We're going to get into just the basic knowledge of rotations, minutes, coach's anticipation, how they're going to leverage the rotations, their pace of plays. Like you said, we're going to be getting into a lot of this. And we already got plenty to talk about in the offseason. It hasn't been a boring offseason. I know you know that.
Oh, no doubt, man. There's no doubt. And that really is a perfect lead in to what we wanted to do on the first couple of shows here is address those biggest moves that took place in the offseason and how we initially believe they're going to affect the status of those players on the new teams that they went to. So we compiled a list of really the top 10 biggest impact moves of the offseason that will affect DFS. And today we'll go over number 10 through 6. And then next Thursday we will do the top 5. And then if hopefully between now and then we can also get some input from some listeners. Let's share this now so we do it again at the end so that people know how to contact us. I'm on Twitter at Joe Sarvadi, JoeSarvadi, and you'll see parentheses coach. And Mike, how about you?
You can just find me at my good old name, at Mike Apotria. Same thing, MikeApotria. I'm always on the Twitter. I'm always tweeting a little bit here and there. So, you could always catch me on there.
And I'm on there all the time as well. And, any questions, input, we want really to get a lot of involvement of our listeners, and we'll bring that into our show. So if there's some moves that we didn't talk about or you want to add to, please hit us up on Twitter. And you can also reach us at hoop-ball.com on the forums. We're always on there, answering questions and doing stuff there. So with no further ado, let's jump into the first one on the list, and that's number 10. Pelicans received massive haul from Lakers in the Davis trade. So we want to talk here about the Pelicans and just get a little bit of an initial feel for what we can expect. And let me preface it by saying one thing, because I think this is sort of the most important thing really to hit on right now is these next 6 shows are not going to be full of, oh, wow, this guy's going to be great, steer from this guy, but fade this guy. It's not going to be that. We're going to talk about the real stuff. And with all of the moves in fantasy, if you stick with us these 6 shows, we get through a bunch of this information, you're gonna have a massive edge, because DFS starts in the exhibition season and those first 2 or 3 weeks before the sites adjust the pricing. They're confused. I mean, like, how do you factor in the first and third highest usage guy in Harden and Westbrook now being on the same team? How does that price out? How's it going to affect things? So just that, for an example, is let's grind some of this out and let's get you, way ahead of the game before it barely starts.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We have a lot of moves to talk about, and understanding how another team's rotation might be looking, how these minutes might be getting distributed heading into even the preseason or the regular season is going to give you that edge. It's going to allow you to have a grasp and understanding on whether a guy might be overpriced or underpriced. And you might have heard me mention, if you subscribe and are a fan of our Hoopball yearly package, you'll see I have a little DFS intro in there, and it's one of the first things I mention, is that the opening night in this preseason are the easiest ways you can capitalize and take advantage of the fish in the sea if you're being a shark. There's plenty of avenues you could take. And it's my favorite night of the year for DFS. It's just me looking at all those prices and just my mouth is watering, salivating, just thinking, wow, this guy should probably be about $3,000 more. And I know the price is going to be adjusted within the first 3 games of the season. So let me cash in on it now.
No question about it, man. Well, why don't you give me a few thoughts on the Pelicans? Because it's going to be a very tough one to figure out. I mean, obviously no one's had more moves than them. So what are some hot takes you got for us on the Pelicans, Mike?
Well, I don't think it's anything that's going to be nuclear hot. I mean, last season, if we look at them, they did manage to play at one of the faster paces, but they were also a complete dumpster fire and a garbage fire. We kind of knew where a lot of the usage was going to be coming, and now with Davis out, we kind of got to see what they looked like a little bit without Davis last year, obviously when he was sitting out. But now they, like you said, they have a massive haulback. They got a few players who are going to command some usage, who are going to command the ball. We're going to see a lot more of just Drew Holiday only playing the 2 now. We saw it a little bit last year. They would start a few other point guards alongside of him, but he's exclusively going to be a shooting guard now. So we're going to see a couple of his assist numbers drop a little bit, but we'll probably see a little bit of the scoring total go up as well. But I'm looking at the guys that we know. We like Lonzo Ball. He's a guy that we're going to have to keep an eye on for DFS because he could be a walking triple-double. And those bonuses. And, maybe we should have touched on this a little bit earlier, but knowing the scoring format of whatever website you're playing on is absolutely necessary. Some sites might give you more for bonuses. Some sites don't give you anything for bonuses. And some might give you more for blocks and steals as well. So knowing whatever site and the format that they're going to go by for their scoring totals is absolutely key. Because guys like Lonzo Ball, guys that can get steals and get these, triple doubles and double doubles, they're going to be greatly affected more than anybody else on that. And I do think with the ball in his hands, playing, close to 35, 36 minutes, he's going to be a force to be reckoned with when it comes into the assist, the rebounding categories. They're going, they added Derek Favors to the front court. Obviously, they drafted Zion, but neither one of those guys has ever, I can't really speak on Zion too much, but the way he plays at a high energy. He's going to push the tempo. And for those kinds of players, we're going to see a lot of guard rebounds for both of them as well. So I'm going to be very high on keeping an eye on Lonzo, Ingram over there as well. I'm probably going to, I've never really been an Ingram fan. I don't think he's a bad player. I think he's an amazing player. Don't get me wrong. But looking at DFS, I want guys that can get a lot of the counting stats. And if they're not going to get the counting stats, put up 30-plus points in the actual scoring column. 2
things I want to touch on before I throw my Pelican stuff in is I think you made one of the most important points as well, and we're going to address that in a couple of our episodes, probably I believe 4 and 5 of, we'll talk that time of the different sites, the scoring systems, because again, they're all different. There's bonuses for double doubles on some don't, all kinds of different things. And there's also a tremendously different strategy, as I'm sure our listeners know, but we're going to break it down a little bit of, how do you weigh ownership, and how does that work in a GPP situation compared to a cash game? And, all of those factors come into play, and we're going to break those out one by one, because, you've got people that play DFS and play it 100% differently than the other guy, as far as what they're entering, how they're formulating their lineups, what their strategy is. And what we're going to do is break that down in coming shows of, making sure that whatever strategy you choose, that you're maximizing all of the ways that you can use that to your benefit. Because if you're playing, for example, a GPP lineup that you also are going to throw into a big cash game you're doing, generally the way that those lineups are formulated are completely different, and you're setting yourself up to lose. So, we'll talk and go through those little pieces that we've learned, not just from ourselves, but from some of the most respected players in the industry. And so I wanted to mention that because I think that was a fantastic point. And again, that's that next, we're peeling it back on a next level on, we're really trying to take it to a completely different level of examining how you can be a champ in DFS. So, all right, Pelicans for me, I think I love the fact that Elvin Gentry has always been an up-tempo coach wherever he's been, Suns all through the years. He loves to push the ball. And I think, having Lonzo and all these young legs with Ingram and they're going to be one of the higher scoring teams, I think, in the league. So, it's going to be a matter of us when we start looking more and more at the Pelicans, are we sold on Lonzo's shot? I mean, his percentages were a little shaky for sure. So, determining, where he's at with his game and where that's going to fit into your lineups. Everybody's touting Drew Holiday that, this is his team. They've said that. The GM and coach have said he's the leader of this team. So, he seems he's a great two-way player. He defends terrific and, could be setting up for a huge year. And then all the other pieces that they put together. I mean, it's going to be this is going to be one of those teams that when we really start breaking out, the positionality of it is we look to see because you're going to have some hits and misses early on here, of guys, they're going to come out of the gate. Even Zion. I mean, we have to, we're not exactly sure the initial minutes or load that they're going to put on him, right out of the gates. So, I think this is going to be one of those teams to circle and watch. But, it was a massive move. I think, it was the biggest story to me of the offseason was at the end of last year, the Pelicans looked like the biggest dumpster fire in the history of the NBA. Davis wouldn't play, the crowd's booing, nobody wanted to come to games. They just, everything was falling apart. The trade wasn't going to work. It was a nightmare. And then they hired David Griffin, who I've always really thought was underrated. I mean, he's a genius of the game. And they get the first pick with a 14% chance. They get the first pick. Then they pull off this trade and, grab this boatload of young talent. Also got to see Jackson Hayes, another young guy that they drafted in the summer league, and he just blew me away. They're going to be absolute blast to watch, and I can't believe that you probably couldn't sell a season ticket at the end of last year for the coming year for the Pelicans if you were giving them, $25 a ticket. But now it's a hot ticket. So I'm excited for them, and I think as we go further, we'll dive in a lot more in depth with the Pelicans.
Oh, yeah, they're going to be on everyone's league pass this season. Everyone's going to want to watch the tempo that they're playing at. They're going to want to watch Zion, acrobatic dunks, the Lonzo alley-oops to him. It's going to be a fun team to watch. They're definitely going to be one of the ones I have on my league pass, so I'm going to be keeping an eye on. But I'm curious on that opening night. exactly what Zion's price tag will be, because it's like you said, there is a lot of offense on that team, but there's a lot of spots where that usage is going to be as well. So, if he's up there in one of those elevated price tags, he's going to be an attractive name. Everyone's going to want to play him just because of the name. It might be something to keep an eye on going forward when you're looking into that, first night, opening night, maybe a name to almost fade.
Oh, absolutely. And a lot of it will depend on the pricing. But, these national games that are on TV, people always give a slight edge to being able to watch their guys if they don't have the ticket. And, you can get some value and stuff we'll talk about in those areas going forward. But, yes, if there's anybody that's probably going to be a little overinflated price-wise, game one, I'm guessing it's going to be Zion as well. But we say that, and I'll probably come out and throw a 20-20 on the board first game.
So that had to be the biggest, trade of the offseason, possibly. I mean, there's a few other ones that we're going to talk about that may have a little bit more impact, but there's got to be a big sign-in trade that we have to talk about as well.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And I was going to say, and I think the news with D'Angelo Russell going over to Golden State is going to send ripples to the DFS world. They have another shooter, another ball handler. It's a different aspect that they actually haven't had on their team before. I mean, yes, he's not Klay Thompson. Obviously, he's not Kevin Durant, but he does something that neither one of those guys can do, and that's dribble out the clock a little bit where Steph Curry can get free. How do you think, D'Angelo Russell going over to Golden State, how do you think this is going to impact the value? Like, we saw D'Angelo Russell really break out last year and be a fourth quarter monster and a DFS monster. I've had a few big nights where he's low owned because of his boom or bust capability. And if you get him on those nights where he booms, you could really be counting some money.
No doubt about it, man. And you're right. And that is our number 9. Warriors land D'Angelo Russell and Durant sign and trade. So you're on all over it, Mr. Apotria. Also, we've got a quick take from D'Angelo that we wanted to share with you when he was interviewed about when he got traded and what his future looks like with the Warriors.
Hey, D'Angelo, with how your career has grown, what do you kind of foresee yourself with Golden State in the fit?
Honestly, I'm excited. I'm excited more than anything. I think it's a huge opportunity, just to take another step, and learn from a good group of guys that have, have marked their way in this career. I mean, in this league. So I'm super excited.
How do you view a backcourt tandem with you and Steph?
I think it's something that you got guys that they can shoot, dribble, and play make for others. That's a dangerous combo, and then a guy like him that gets hot anytime throughout the game, it's something that it gives you an advantage throughout a game, I would say. So to add another guy that could possibly do that consistently, I think that's just an extra piece.
Awesome, man. And I'll tell you, he sounds like he is focused and ready to attack the game with Curry in the backcourt. I think it is going to be a blast. And then when they get Klay back, can you imagine, that firepower from the perimeter? Good Lord.
They're going to be a fun team to watch. And people are counting them out, and I just can't for the life of me understanding it. They still have Draymond. They still have the best shooter of all time. They're, Steve Kerr, an amazing coach. This team, they even added these small ancillary pieces, being like, Willie Cauley-Stein, guys that other teams just threw away. That's my favorite thing to see from a good coach and a good organization, is taking other people's scraps, other people that teams have given up on, and really getting the best out of them. Because at the end of the day, a guy like Willie Cauley-Stein, after what's, I guess you could say, been an underwhelming career so far, in limited minutes over there in Sacramento, going over to a place like Golden State, you really appreciate playing for a winning team, playing for a winning culture, and a winning coach. That can really get the best out of a player. So, and now with a few of their centers out of the picture, unfortunately, Boogie Cousins, we're going to probably touch on him plenty of times throughout the season. And, over here at Hoopball, we're always wishing a guy like that a speedy recovery. I mean, I can't remember the last time I've seen a guy go from such utter dominance to just injury after injury after injury, and fighting back and trying to claw his way back into, just staying on the court, trying to earn a minimum contract almost at this point. It's unfathomable how fast that's happened to him, and we just want to see this guy get back on the court and be as close to what he used to be as possible.
Yeah, it's a sad story, and now he's got some other issues personally that have come out just in the last few days. So, yeah, Godspeed to him, man. He's got a lot of things to deal with. But as far as D'Angelo and his role with the Warriors, I mean, when the trade first came down, everybody just thought that was going to be okay. They're going to move D'Angelo in another trade, and then all of a sudden, you hear all the chatter of, wait a minute, these they're going to play these guys together, and it just it's created a lot of buzz. And I don't know if you listened closely in that interview, it was funny, but when they asked D'Angelo a question about the Warriors, he instead of team, he used the word Curry and then corrected himself. And it was like, I mean, I think he is just ecstatic to play with Curry. I mean, I watched D'Angelo with the Lakers, and he was not, I don't know how to put it in a real gentle way, but he seemed to have a bit of a attitude, let's put it that way. But when I think getting traded to Brooklyn and having to reset himself and refocus, I saw a completely different guy last year, especially the second half. He was a team player. He was a motivator. He was a leader. So, to go to, I mean, you can't blame him. He was picked 19 years old from Ohio State, second pick overall in LA. I mean, I'm sure at 19 I'd have the same issues, but it was wonderful to see just the maturation process of how he's turned it around so quickly. And now that he gets to be under Curry's wing, I mean, that's a guy I'm just super high on. I think it's going to be a blast, and I agree with you. I do not want to tangle with the Warriors and Draymond and those guys with a chip on their shoulder feeling disrespected. They are not out of it.
Not even close. And, last thing maybe we'll touch on with Russell is you hit the nail on the head with the age and that being a factor. And he's kind of always played on younger teams. He believe it or not, as young as he is, he was looked at, even when he was a Laker, 19 years old, he was looked at to be almost like a leadership role because he was a second overall pick on a rebuilding team. A lot was expected from him. Same thing when he went over there and played in Brooklyn. And he immediately had to step up and be that guy for that team. And he was still at a young age doing so, 22 years old, 23 years old. And so, now he's playing with guys that are a little bit older, guys that have won a championship, guys that have, they have an established chemistry. You're not going into like a Brooklyn Nets situation where he's going to build that dynamic and build that team chemistry and be the franchise player over there. It's get with it or get lost now when you go to Golden State. They have a method that's working. It worked for them in the past, so it will continue to work. So now Russell's going to have to kind of get into their culture, and that's going to be huge for him. I'm going to be expecting obviously a little less on the usage. The scoring will probably take a little bit of a hit, but I'm really not expecting as big of a hit as a lot of people probably would now that he's going to be playing in Golden State because he's going to be playing at a much faster pace on Golden State than I think he was when he was playing in Brooklyn.
I agree, and I think a lot more is going to be expected until Clay comes back. I think, this is one of those DFS scenarios where it's going to, really be interesting to see the pricing, but based on the usage, and what the pace of play that Warriors have always played at, I have no problem rostering a D'Angelo and a Steph Curry early on in the season if the pricing is reasonable, because I think they're going to carry a massive load for that team for sure.
Oh, yeah. And, I mean, let's factor in, we were shied away from that for the past few years, and it was because of Kevin Durant. It's hard to play, let's say Klay Thompson and Steph Curry in the same lineup when Durant is on the court as well. That's a ton of usage. Durant gone, there's still enough usage where you can get away in DFS with playing, a D'Angelo Russell, Steph Curry lineup. It doesn't seem like it would be, I guess, the best correlating lineup necessarily because they will eat into each other's value slightly. Obviously, you want to try to just hit the best scorers from every team with, good counting stats. And at the end of the day, you'll have a great lineup. But we're going to get into game stacks. We're going to get into kind of playing these correlating plays, and we're also going to talk about trying to get some lower owned guys in there just so we can get our edge that way. So on the nights where people are going to only want to play one of those guys, you can get a small advantage by getting them both in there and just hoping that the Warriors go off for one of their 127-point nights. And if they do, the lefty's going to have a lot to do with it.
Well, when you get that edge, like I had that one day with a 1% owned JaVale McGee in my solo lineup. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't want to bring that up already.
Hey, JaVale McGee, who needs the 80? I can't even remember the stats yet. I remember it was at least
26 and 21 with six blocks.
And that will go down, people, as one of the worst beats I've had, because I swear I could not tell you how many times I was like, Kuzma is back. They're gonna go small ball. There's no way. And
I didn't mean to ruffle your feathers, man.
That's the edge to be had, because
it's etched in my brain. That's all.
I can promise you, I wasn't the only expert out there that was probably thinking very similar, and I'm sure there was other experts out there that were right on your side as well. So it's always good to get both of those angles, and that's why we're here. We both have two slightly different styles of play. We both kind of play two different types of games, so we want to be able to help everybody in every aspect for all their DFS needs, not just the guys that are loading up 150 contests into the GPPs, and not just the guys that are playing one lineup in a $4 head-to-head. We're here for everybody. So
absolutely, and we want to have different opinions, and when we agree, it's going to be great, and when we don't, we're going to let you make those decisions out there, and that's to me, it's laying it all out. Giving you our best advice, but ultimately giving you the tools to make the best decisions. So we'll keep talking on that. So let's jump to the next one. It's number 8 is Celtics sign Kemba Walker. And I'll start off on that one because I've been a big backer and follower of the Team USA. I've always enjoyed, rooting for Team USA through the FIBA championships and obviously, the Olympics and everything else. So I've followed them very closely. I know that the news mainly on the USA team has been about who's not playing rather than who is. But, Kemba is stepped up and taken a leadership role, is the best player on that Team USA team. They open on Sunday, so 3 days from now in pool play in the FIBA championships. So I wish Kemba the best in USA in that endeavor. But, this being part of sort of, I think, also the maturation process of Kemba Walker. I mean, he's always been on a bad team in Charlotte. We knew he was a winner because of his ability to win a national championship at Connecticut and just the way he carries himself out there on the floor. And I think, this USA experience, being able to play for Coach Pop, coming into a Boston situation where sort of everything fell apart a little bit from what they were planning on doing, and now putting the ball in his hands, I think is going to be terrific. I think that we're going to see a really good, consistent season out of Kemba. I think that Coach Stevens, now that he's got Kyrie out of the way and that whole mess that they had there last year, will be able to coach to a level that we've all seen him capable of coaching to, and I think Kemba will be a perfect fit for that. A lot of people are saying, well, it's similar to what the Isaiah Thomas situation was when he came in and he blew up all the stats. And I see that and I get it. I think Kemba is a little stronger full game than Isaiah, based on assists and defending a little bit better, etc. So I think he's a guy, definitely put a circle around. Again, he may be a guy because of all the hoopla surrounding him that may be priced higher initially, but something we're going to have to really look at, because there is a lot of usage with Irving and Horford and guys that have left the team and still waiting for Tatum and some of the other younger guys to step up. But all in all, I've got Kemba circled as a guy that I'm looking at early on. What about you?
I think you touched on something that is a great point, and it's the fact that how similar their games are. But yeah, obviously they're very different. One thing I like to point out is that they're both excellent fourth quarter scorers. A lot of their value that you'll find on DFS nights, you'll be rostering Kemba Walker. He'll have 27 points going into the fourth quarter, and he'll finish with 52. For DraftKings or for FanDuel, FantasyDraft, wherever you may be playing, these guys can score in the fourth quarter. And now we're seeing Kemba Walker play on a better team. So we're going to see, yes, the Boston team looks like it's in shambles after losing, Kyrie, Horford, a lot of major pieces, but they're still better than what he was dealing with over there in Charlotte. They're going to be more competitive, which is going to give Kemba the opportunity to play more in the fourth quarter. A lot of the times, if Kemba Walker didn't hit his value, it was because he only played 28 minutes on the night. They were getting blown out by the fourth, and there was no point to put him back in there. And now we're going to be able to see him close these fourth quarter games out. He's going to be the guy taking the final shot on the team. I think the only downside we would have to, and maybe it's a devil's advocate saying it, is if Kemba is maybe a little bit shot shy for the first few weeks, maybe a month into the regular season, playing on a new team, trying to get adjusted with these younger guys, trying not to assert his dominance as much as he was able to in Charlotte, where he knew at the end of the day, I'm the only guy that's able to score on this team. He was, playing alongside Cody Zeller, Marvin Williams, guys like Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, a couple rookies over there. So it's a big, big difference in the situation. And I think that's the most important thing that you have to talk about with Kemba is we know he can score the rock. We know he has one of the most killer crossovers and step backs in the game. He can attack the rack and get to the rim anytime he wants. But now he has more minutes and a better availability to do so on a better team. So we're going to see a little bit more, I think, of a higher minutes total from him. And as once he gets comfortable, the shot total should just correct itself. And yeah, I think we're going to see some big games out of Kemba going forward. And it's a perfect situation over there in Boston. And they're happy to have him. They love him over there in Boston.
Great points for sure. And I think it's a big advantage that he gets to play with three of his mates on Team USA. There's four Celtics on that squad. And so that's, as far as, they're going to have a big jump start on chemistry together prior to the season. Just something else to take a note on. A lot of people have a tendency coming out of the Olympics or FIBA to fade guys early on because they figure they're tired. Because let's face it, it's FIBA World Championships end 2 weeks before the preseason games start. So, yes, those guys are going to be, I think what you'll see with those guys is a little more tired aspect of them toward the end of the season. But I think early on, it may be the opposite of what people are going to do in fading them. Is I think they're going to be sharper, and their chemistry, especially with those four playing together, is going to be something that we need to also keep in mind. So excellent, man. Before we jump to number 7, I want to give another quick shout out to our presenting sponsor because they are the ones that allow us to bring this free content out there and share with you guys. And that is FantasyDraft. And go to FantasyDraft.com, look and sign up with the promo code Hoop-Ball, and you receive 1 free week trial membership where you can play up to $1,000 in complimentary rake-free DFS. And take advantage of that, man, because I'm telling you, the rake adds up like you would not believe. And if you get that opportunity to make a good chunk of money on the front side without paying any rake, it's fantastic. So big thanks again to Fantasy Draft for help bringing this to us. I also want to say a thank you to just our hoop ball team, Dan Vespris especially. Man, he is just behind the scenes working his tail off, helping bring this whole thing together. And Red Circle, who we're utilizing, that's really pushing out all of our podcasts to everywhere. And I'll mention that now as well as you can listen to this Hoopball DFS Today podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Podbean, iHeart, Spotify, YouTube, pretty much everywhere podcasts can be found. So we ask you to jump on there, wherever suits your fancy, and whatever one it is, subscribe, like, give us 5 stars, anything you can to help us promote this podcast and get some momentum as we approach the season. Our goal is to be able to do these shows, dig in deep, and create a lot of free content that's going to help you guys make a lot of money and be successful and enjoy playing some DFS. So, all right, man, that gets the plug set, and we will jump to number 7. 76ers received Josh Richardson in the Butler sign-and trade. What do you got, Mike?
This is going to be a fun team to watch. I'm a big Josh Richardson fan, and it's not from a DFS standpoint. I actually hate playing him in DFS. It's more or less from just an actual basketball standpoint. The guy's very good at basketball, very good defender. Can spot up, take a three. He's an unbelievable player, and he's somebody I've always had my eye on since he came into the league. But his role is going to be drastically different over there in Philly than it was in Miami. We're not going to see him handling the ball as much because now, it's going to be the Ben Simmons show over there with the ball. And now with vice versa, with Butler gone, it's going to allow Ben Simmons to be that primary ball handler, solidifying his value even a little bit more in DFS and regular seasons with the assist total. So as far as Josh Richardson, we're probably going to see him come in at a little bit of an elevated price tag if it's anywhere according to what it was in Miami. And with the new usage total with Horford over there, Embiid obviously commanding a lot of that usage down low. Tobias Harris is going to be playing a lot of the three now as well, and he's going to be the best 3-point shooter on the team, and it won't even be close. So it's going to be hard for Richardson to come across some of these shots that he was seeing in Miami. But if this team could stay healthy, that's a mean starting five when you just look at it on paper.
And I'm with you. As a basketball coach, I'm ecstatic to have Josh Richardson on my team because he's a elite defender. We're talking all NBA level defender, and he just has so much athleticism. As far as DFS, I doubt, right from now, I can tell you that I'm not going to be taking Josh Richardson hardly ever because I just don't see the usage being strong enough on such a great team. And I don't think his percentages and the role that he'll fill are going to be something that's going to be real conducive to be a high point DFS score. Now, I think, you pick your spots when we find a matchup that's going to be something that he can take advantage of, then definitely. But, I watched a lot of Heat games last year, and he was the go-to guy the majority of the time. When every big shot, if Wade wasn't in the game to take a shot at the end, it was him taking the shot. And I don't think that that's going to be the case at all in Philadelphia. I think he'll help them terrifically, and I think that he'll be a big part of Philly's success, and I think they're going to have a great season. But as from a DFS standpoint, I think that that's a guy that you're going to have, really look at fading unless something changes going into the year. And then just to touch really quickly on the other side of it, even though it's not as much part of this, but the Butler aspect, since we just discussed it that way, I think flips to the other scenario. I think with Wade retiring and Richardson moving on, and knowing the system that Spoelstra and Riley run at Miami and how they like to feature certain people, and they got Whiteside the heck out of there, and I think Butler's going to just blow up, man. He is a guy that I have 5 circles around for fantasy because I think, you've got a happy Butler. He's in a place where he wants to be for the first time in a long time, and he is going to be the man, and he's going to get the big shot. So that's a guy on the other side of the spectrum that I'm going to be jumping on early.
Yeah, that's a good point. And touching back on Josh Richardson, this doesn't mean you can't play Josh Richardson ever. Because as I said, I never liked to play him. But the nights I would play him is when he was going to take on a little bit more of a ball handling responsibility. And on games where if Ben Simmons rests or sits out, he will probably be one of the primary ball handlers for that team. So in that kind of circumstance, that's the time where you might want to jump on him because we're going to be seeing that lower or decreased price tag from the regular season usage of playing with Ben Simmons when we can take advantage of that price tag when a night that he misses because where he's going to see a huge usage tick when he's handling the ball.
Great point, brother. Great point. All right, the last one for this show, number 6, is the 76ers sign Al Horford. And let's jump on a clip real quick. And there was a great question asked to Al Horford about his excitement about being able to play with Joel Embiid. So let's listen into that real quick.
How much did your battles with Joe really play into any decision to want to come here?
Well, I think I've said this in the past. I've always been a fan of Joel and just everything he brings on the court, off the court. And, there were some great battles. And when this opportunity came along and the possibility of, teaming up with him, got me really excited about the potential, how good we can be, help our team be defensively, just get to working together and do some special things. So I'm very grateful, to be in this position.
Awesome, man. And as you can hear right there, Al Horford is really has a great mindset for this team. And I cannot wait to see him out there on the floor with Joel Embiid and Harris in this team. I think that was a great signing for Philly. And, from the DFS side, I've heard some rumblings and some touts out there saying they think that Horford is going to affect Embiid's value and numbers. And I'm from the exact opposite school of thought, because I believe Horford is going to make Embiid a better player. Horford's going to stay away from the basket. He's going to let Embiid still own the paint. He's going to create spacing that Embiid didn't always have in certain scenarios. And I think he's going to teach him to be even a better defender, to the point where, he's going to be maybe the top or one of the top shot blockers in the league. And I think this mixture is going to be fantastic. Now, how is Horford's statistics going to pan out? He was a hit or miss guy in DFS last year. I mean, even with Boston in those roles, there were times where, I would take Horford and he was awesome, and times where he'd be terrible. So, it's going to be, I think he's going to be one of those guys where we have to see what type of exact rotation minutes-wise. They may try to be a little bit more cognizant of the minutes. I think at times last year when he was overused, he ended up having to sit and take some load management games. So I think, Embiid's the guy to put a circle around, just based on what Horford is saying and the way that he understands that, this is sort of Embiid's team. And I think it's going to be a great thing for him.
Absolutely. And the biggest thing of it is it's an insurance factor for Embiid. And it's going to be an insurance factor on DFS as well. They don't want to play Embiid 82 games. That is literally the last thing that the 76ers would like to do. And now that they have the option to rest him and have a very, very comparable center come in, one that is experienced, one that knows his role, that, this is the first time I think since early in his career that we're going to be seeing Al Horford play his natural position of power forward. He was never naturally a center. So now having the opportunity, to start at the 4 and also play some backup 5 when Embiid needs a break, and to get him in there I'm looking at him when Embiid sits out, because let's be real, Horford's not a guy that's going to be able to get a ton of rebounds on any given night, especially if Embiid's on the court. That's never been a huge part of his game. He's usually been around that, 7 to 8 mark for his averages, but I think now he's going to have a little bit more of an opportunity when Embiid needs to sit, because he's going to be one of the key cogs for that offense. A lot of offenses we'd see in Boston would run through him. He's a very good passer out of the post. So he's a guy that I'm very excited for, just not for DFS unless Embiid's sitting.
It's going to be, as we talk about all of these teams, very seldom has there been this much player movement of main guys in the league. I mean, everybody knows that. But how it affects all of the other, how all the dominoes fall as far as usage and minutes and rotations, that's what we really need to start examining, because, there may be guys that, we're selling short initially, and guys that will take a little bit more of a backseat. So, this is one of those situations where we can really scour it out and figure it out. But, some of it's going to be a little bit of a wait and see to see how they produce.
Absolutely. And, while it's a wait and see, that's what a lot of people, that's the approach a lot of people are going to take. So that's why we're talking about it now. We're going to have to wait and see on a lot of it, but the better understanding we can have on the situation heading into it, that's our edge. I said it off at the beginning of the podcast, having an edge in every single way, finding every single edge, even if it comes down to the narratives of childbirth. We've seen guys capitalize the day after they have a child. It's insane. The little things that you can do to get an edge in here, you could really run away with. And I'll tell you one thing, Coach. And when you win off of a crazy edge like something like that, it's one that you never forget. You'll have it circled on your calendar. You'll have your reminders set in your phone. Everything to remind you of that exact same situation and scenario, because you want to catch that lightning in a bottle once again. So. We're going to be keeping an eye on it, and it seems something like small, Horford being great when Embiid is out, but, maybe just talking about it now might set off that light bulb for when the situation does happen, because on a loaded 12-game slate, it's easy to overlook things like that. There's going to be plenty of other center options or power forward options, and it's a very easy thing to overlook, and we're just trying to capture and kind of circle those dates on our calendars as much as we could now, and trying to help you guys out by having, getting you guys to kind of have a good understanding of what things to look out for long before they happen.
Absolutely. And those edges, not just, yes, the narratives for sure, but watching, different things at ends of games when people aren't watching. Who gets in that took advantage of that last 2 or 3 minutes at the end of an 18-point game? Who stood out, who earned a few extra minutes from the coach? Mike will attest to this. I had a pretty massive win last year towards the end of the season, and it was because of these kinds of things. I had seen DeLon Wright play for the Grizz, and just he looked like he was taking his game to another level and was about to just, really make a statement. And I plugged him in a lineup one night, and again, I think he was 3-4% owned. And Christian Wood, that was with the Pelicans at the time, during all of that insanity of, Okafor was playing a little bit, AD wasn't playing, and I saw his athleticism. I remember watching him blow it up in summer league, and plugged him in, and he was it said 0% ownership, so between 0 and 1%. And those two guys both went for like 45, 50 fantasy points each. So you get guys like that with small ownership at small cost, and then you can layer them in with the Hardens that obviously, puts up his normal 50-point, 10-assist game that he did a bunch of times. And, all of a sudden you've got a big DFS score. And if you remember, I tried not to take too much of a home run trot, but I think I shared that snippet of a screen with you, Mike, on that win.
I actually do remember it, and I can 100% tell you, if there was a night that Christian Wood went off, I probably had some shares of him. I am a huge, we're going to touch on this in probably one of maybe the third or fourth episode once we start to get into our actual strategy a little bit more. And I'm a big point per minute guy, and both those guys you named, Christian Wood and DeLon Wright, have always been massive point per minute producers, just never had the opportunity for the minutes. And that's one thing that you need to know and keep an eye on, is what those guys, when they have that opportunity, that is when you jump on it. Because it only takes these major DFS sites, a day or two to price enforce these guys. And before you know it, you could be jumping on the train when you're supposed to be jumping off. And that's why we want you guys to have an understanding. And those two guys, Christian Wood's going to be over there in Detroit now. If Andre Drummond is to miss a game and Christian Wood sees 25 minutes, he's going to be dirt cheap, and he's going to be a guy I'm going to plug and play in a lot of my lineups. And it's just a fact. When the guy is on the court, he scores DFS points. He may not be the best player on the court. I'm not saying he's an amazing, world-class center, because otherwise we wouldn't have seen him get, traded and released from about 3 or 4 different teams in the past few years. But when he's on the court, there's no doubt about it. He puts up stats. And that's what we're worried about in DFS. We're not necessarily worried about if this guy's going to win a championship, he's going to be an MVP contender, whatever that may be. But no, we want the stats on that night, and then the next slate, it's a whole new game. We got to forget about everything else. We got to break everything down again. But he is a fantastic point per minute producer, and so is DeLon Wright. He's a guy I'm really excited to see play over there in Dallas. I think we both are. I don't know if I ever kind of told you this, Coach, but I try to keep my fan base out of my decisions and everything. But I've been a diehard Dallas fan, and it was basically because of Dirk and a little bit of Nash. That's basically what got me into the love of basketball. I love watching the Mavericks, and he's one guy I'm very excited to see play alongside of Luka.
To your point there, what is the saying that I told you the first time about when we talked about DFS? What's my little saying motto I live by?
Oh, you're a big minutes equal money kind of guy.
There you go. Minutes equal money.
You're a big minutes equal money, and it's exactly
I knew
that.
You'd have it. You're right, dude.
Of course.
When in doubt, give me the minutes. I mean, that I agree. I mean, it's unbelievable to me that people will pay a top dollar for a guy that's playing 16 to 18 minutes when, you can take a guy that's, maybe not nearly as good of a player, but that's going to log 30, 35 minutes. I'm telling you, in the long run, minutes equal money in the NBA because you're going to be on the end of the ball could bounce anyway to you for a rebound or for, you're going to pass the ball to somebody that makes a shot. It's different than other sports, sports specific to like baseball and football, it's performance for that one person. But if you get the opportunity out there in basketball, it's so fast moving and there's so many different things churning, you're going to get some points just by being on the court. So, we'll talk about that'll be one episode when we're talking strategy and some people disagree with that, but I'm telling you, I have seen it over and over. You find those guys, like those two nights. Yeah, why did Wood and Wright play so well that night? Well, they both played like 30, 35 minutes. They just both got big minutes and they did produce. But you can't produce if you're only playing 10, 12 minutes in those scenarios. So you're right, man. You are right on the money. All right. Well, we got through our top five. They're 10 through 6. Next Thursday, we'll be back with our second installment, and we'll go through the top 5 biggest moves and then sort of set the playing field for the next 4 shows where we'll give everybody an idea of sort of what we're going to do show by show and how, we tried to give you a little bit of 30,000-foot view into it today, but we'll start breaking it down so that everybody, can really join in. And again, we're all about, we're going to be brutally honest all the time, like I say, and we're going to review our lineups the next day. And, we're in this together. We want to help all of you do as well as you possibly can, win as much as you possibly can, and have a great time doing it. And I think that if you keep all of those things in mind, please flood us with information, questions, anything that you have that you want us to share on the show. Just real quickly, again, at Twitter. On Twitter, I'm at Joe Sarvadi, JoeSarvadi, and at Mike Apotria. We MikeApotria, right?
You got it. I mean,
all right.
Every other teacher I've ever had probably butchered that. Fun fact, actually, before we go, even the DMV butchered it. I mean, I don't think I spelled it wrong, but my license is actually spelled wrong. I don't know if I can get away with any sort of like murder with that, looking for the wrong guy kind of thing. But
oh no, you're kidding!
I'm not.
How do you get away with that at the airport?
I have my passport is right. It's crazy. It's only like that on my license. It makes absolutely no sense, and I keep saying I'm going to go take care of it, but I've never actually completely ran into an issue where I've been forced to have to go take care of it. It almost happened when it came to buying my new car, which hint, hint, DFS winnings work. So when I was getting my car, they said the same thing. Oh, sir, we ran your credit, and it doesn't look like you have any. And I said, well, did you use the one on my license? Because that's not how you spell my name. And that was a weird look I got when I was at the dealership. But
oh my God, now that is unbelievable. You need to get that fixed, brother. But all right. Well, I mean, do you have any last thoughts that you wanted to share before we sign out? We want to keep the show about an hour so that it got a lot of value for everybody, but isn't too much too quick?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head, man. I think we're ready to go. I'm pumped up. I'm fired up to get this going with you. I just want to say a big thank you, again, to everybody over at Fantasy Draft, everybody over here at Hoopball. Dan and Brew have been completely supportive of this. Helping us get this set up, working with us. They want to see this be successful just as much as we want to see it be successful. And thank you for everybody who's kind of stuck with us along the way, and everybody that was joining those DFS expert contests last year. If you guys have any sort of feedback, hit us with it. We want to make this as user gauged as possible. We want you guys to be engaged. We want you guys to be attentive. We want to make you guys better because. At one point, years and years ago, before I got into the big, fantasy world and became a writer and a podcaster, I was a guy who listened to the podcast too, and I just always have those thoughts of how can I make this better? I wish they did this a little bit differently. I wish they, touched on that just a little bit more. And we want to give the people what they want, I think, right, Coach? We want to give them what they want.
I am with you, man. And I also want to thank Aaron Bruschi and Dan Vespris, who are Hoopball, for giving me this opportunity and Mike and I this forum to go out there and really build this with you guys, and just really thankful for them. And also, obviously to Fantasy Draft for jumping on. It always takes a leap of faith when you're doing something new and putting something new out there. And we've had a great team and great support. So thank you to them. Also, want to thank you listeners. Thank you for listening to the first Hoopball DFS Today podcast. And, we hope you'll join us again next Thursday. Again, that show will probably air mid-morning that day as well. The motto I want to leave you with is something that I've always stood by in coaching and all the stuff I've done in basketball and in DFS as well. And it's success occurs when opportunity meets preparation. I'm sure everybody's heard that one. But, you don't win in DFS or in your fantasy leagues by accident, by just picking the big names or the stars. It's all about the preparation, the strategy, and we're here to help you mull through all of that to come out to be as successful as you can. So for Mike Apotria and myself, Coach, thank you again for joining us. Let's work together and prepare to crush this NBA season. Thanks again. We're out.
See you later.
This has been a Hoopball presentation.